With the trade deadline approaching, I think it's my duty to explain to you what Droma has become. Now, Droma doesn't really have anything to do with Pedro anymore. Back then, that was a joke that came out of Pedro making a bunch of trades, mostly with J Ray, with Paul, and we didn't know J Ray and Paul's history. We didn't know anything about them. It was happening all so quickly. Pedro was two years off of his first championship, and this was all very confusing. And plus, it was funny to give it the tagline of dangerous things come in small packages or some variation of that. I totally forgot. But Droma doesn't really have anything to do with Pedro anymore. Droma is an attitude. Droma is a way of looking at this fantasy league. Droma mostly has to do with participating in other leagues. Now, what do I mean by that? If you have Patrick Mahomes and you face Orlando, then you obviously don't care about the damage that Patrick Mahomes does because he's also playing for you as well. I understand that. I get that. Some of you guys have larger social circles than I do. I have a very small social circle and even smaller now that I'm here in the North. I'll never play in another league. Ever. Ever. I've never taken any other league seriously. The very first fantasy league that I played in was a fantasy league with Ed that I think was a Yahoo league, and I don't know if Ed can correct me what happened in that league, if we dropped out of it, I'm not even sure. And I think I played a baseball league with Ed as well. Those were the only fantasy leagues that I played in, and I'll never play in another one again, and it's specifically for this reason. Because when you call somebody, or you text somebody, and you make them an offer, playing in another league sort of adds to your cavalierness. It adds to how much of a maverick you are with a trade. When I say Droma, I don't necessarily mean that people make trades with the intention of screwing over the rest of the league and tipping the competitive scale. It's that your ability of risk is a lot higher because you play in other leagues, because you might be winning in another league. That's what's at the genesis of Droma. That's what's at the genesis of it, is not really caring about the consequences within this league because you're playing in 3 or 4 other leagues. So that is to say that Droma can be committed by anyone who plays in another league. Of course, the Alfredians probably play in about 5 or 6 other leagues. Some leagues where they play and they manage the same team. You play to win the game. I just want you to pay attention to that. The second component that makes up Droma is playing in a league without money. Now, we've discussed the money situation before. It seems like everyone in this league they bought into the idea of playing in a league that's more, it rests upon the narrative. It rests upon the history, which does matter, Andy. That it's more enjoyable for people. I think what we've created here is sort of a Sandlot situation where for years to come we have history. And of course, I'm fucking Benny the Jet Rodriguez. But playing with no money is the second part of what makes up Droma. Because if you're not playing for money, and it kind of correlates to playing in other leagues, because I would assume that most of the leagues that you guys play in is for money. It's like, well, this league doesn't really matter because I don't really pay for money, so I don't give a fuck. So here's Alvin Kamara. Those are the things that make up Droma. It's not really with the intent of corruption. It's really in the, let me use a fancy word, in the irreverence of your trading style. You're very irreverent. You don't give a shit. You take chances because this is not your only league. Eric has 7 straight victories, folks. 7. I think the The longest winning streak recently was probably Ed about 2 to 3 years ago. I think Ed had an 8 game winning streak to open up the season, if I'm not mistaken. If Ed is even listening to this, maybe he could let me know. Maybe the commish might have memory of this as well. But Eric has won 7 straight games. Within those 7 games, Eric has managed to score 772 points. Folks, this is week 10. Eric has 770, I can't even talk now, 772 points within the last 7 weeks. Joe has 764 points in the season. So that means 3 extra weeks, and Joe still doesn't have more points than Eric. That just lets you know how many points Eric's been scoring. At top of the point total this season is Paul with 1,098 points. Eric is second with 1,077. A lot of sevens for Eric. The numerology, I don't know what the 7 represents. I sure hope Eric doesn't think he's getting lucky. But just to educate Eric, the definition of Felix actually is lucky. You can actually look that up. Andy with 979, Orlando with 950, and Charles Lee J. Ray with 854. So Eric has been, in my opinion, the best team in the league. And you guys know. One of the things that makes the recap work is because I am objective. I can be completely objective. I don't give a shit if Eric's my brother. I don't give a fuck. I don't care if Andy is about to defeat Orlando and Andy's terrible in every way that you could possibly imagine a human being to be. I want Andy to win because I want the better chance of winning. We'll get to Orlando and his victory in a bit. But I'm completely objective, and I can say that I think personally, especially with the addition of Alvin Kamara, even though Paul's team has more points than Eric, even though Paul's team seems to always be in control. There's not a lot of times this season when I look at the app, which is kind of similar to Andy's season last year. It's kind of similar to Andy's season last year where every time you looked at the app, it never seemed like he was ever in trouble. It's like he was always up by 30 with 4 players to go and his opponent had 1 player to go, and it was, they had no chance. So Paul's always in control. He always seems to put the right players in place, and this seems like it's a strong year for him, but I think Eric has the better team, even though Paul is participating in a weaker division, a division that, as I've mentioned before, got even weaker once Alvin Kamara got kicked the fuck out of the league. Now, this is just an extra stat for you. Last season, Andy scored 1,404. He scored 1,404 points to finish out the season. So, Paul finished second with 1,358, and T-Boy finished third. You guys don't know that, but I did, even though I didn't make the playoffs of it. I was third in scoring. Paul has about 300 points left. About 303 points left to eclipse Andy's total of last year. So I think that speaks to how Paul and Eric have both been good. And my previous statement, and this makes me feel really good to say, my previous statement of Andy taking the front of the line for 1-chip winners with his great season, I like how that's kind of being tarnished a bit with the point totals that these two guys are racking up. So maybe in due time, Andy's season can completely be obliterated because he's just been the most irresponsible champion of all time. But, I'm getting off on my point. This is what makes up Droma. Droma is no longer about Pedro. Yes, it is about the Alfredians and their many, many leagues, but Droma is a feeling. Droma is how you view the league. Droma is in the irreverence. Yes, folks, this is your Week 10 recap, as I said. We're going to get into a few things here. The first thing I want to get to are the Week 10 scores, which was the least interesting thing that happened this whole week. Tim Bundy defeats Joelicus Maximus 78-63. I want to say something. I want to say that my struggle is a bit different than your struggle. Obviously, if I have 3 championships and you have less, then it's as if we're running on the track. And if I'm having a tough year, I'm running at a very slow pace, but I'm several laps ahead of you. So even though you might run past me, you don't know that I've lapped you several times. So my struggle is a little different. This has been a very difficult year. Mostly due to what pisses me off most about this year is because I think some of you can honestly see this too. I've suffered because of decisions made on the field. I've suffered because of Ronald Jones's fumble, and they basically took him out of the game. And I suffered. That was my loss to Pedro, which is a very, very, very frustrating loss. That was a very frustrating loss for that reason because Donald Jones had gotten 3 consecutive 100-yard performances, and fucking Bruce Arian, that fucking asshole, decides to take. Bruce Arian is going to be the reason if I have a failure this fantasy season. It's because of Bruce Arian, because he is just, I don't know what it is. It's like he just hates picking a fucking running back and staying consistent with that running back. Maybe I might have complicated the situation more because I have Fournette now, but I feel like I control that backfield. There's somebody very, very valuable within that backfield. And I own both of them, and let's see what happens in week 11. So I defeated Joelicus Maximus 78-63. And of course, CMC, which, injuries happen. CMC isn't going to play this week again. I'm a fucking champion, all right? I'm a fucking champion. I'm not going to walk around saying, but I don't have CMC. Ed hasn't exactly gotten the most production out of Mike Thomas. And he's not going to get that much production out of Mike Thomas now that... who is the quarterback for the New Orleans Saints now? I know it's a guy that we're all familiar with, and it's not Teddy Bridgewater, obviously. Jameis Winston. It's Jameis Winston, the other black guy. Every time you think of Jameis Winston, you think of crab legs. So he hasn't exactly had a smooth run of it either. So I'm not going to use that as an excuse. But these real on-field decisions are fucking killing me. You also had Ewok Rape defeating La Bamba 129-277. Ewok Rape walks away with the Kirk Cameron Award of Fantasy Excellence. Charles Lee J. Ray defeating D-Generation X 92-82. Fuck you. Losing to Rolo Thomas C 54-101. Fuck you, of course, walks away with the Tito Award. Hensel having a terrible fucking season. Night Fox, even though we have the same amount of victories, go figure, right? Night Fox losing to Orlando 71-74. That was very clutch. Of course, I wanted Andy to win because Orlando, as we will discuss now, is the strongest team of the bubble teams. And let's be honest, Paul, Eric will both win their divisions. They will win their divisions. Paul will walk away with his first division since 2018. Which was if you look back at the papers, that was a struggle division. Paul won with a record of 7-6. Hensel was second with a record of 7-6 as well, but I guess Paul had more points. That was a struggle. That was a struggle win. Eric's is a bit more. Eric hasn't won a division since 2014. 2014, Eric hasn't won a division. This will more than likely be his first division since then. But they're gonna walk away. They're in the playoffs. They're fine. Dro and Andy also at this point are going to get into the playoffs. But Dro and Andy, as I've told you before, there's a lot of nuance to fantasy. There's a lot of nuance to all this shit. And when I say Dro's team is on the decline, I don't know If Dro hears that and he thinks, yeah, but I won, it's not that simple. It's really not that simple. Look at Dro's point totals. I don't have them in front of me here. Maybe if I let's see if I can this new laptop that I have. I went back to Windows. I did it. I went back to Windows, and I'm very happy. And I don't think I'll ever fucking get a. I don't think I'll ever get an Apple computer ever again. They're just Apple's fucking pretentious in just the ways that they do everything. Okay, so since let's say week 6, which I think is when Dro made that trade, Dro beat Orlando 68-67. He lost 61-109 to Andy. He beat me 54-53 in that Ronald Jones game. Comes back and he beats Hensel 75-69, and of course he lost 77-129 to Eric this week. So look at Dro's point totals. And remember, look, and I just want to say this: week 1, let's just run down week 1 through week 5 before he had made that trade. His point totals: 92, 98, 139. 98 and 79. 79 is more than he scored over the past 5 weeks. So before he made the trade, literally, Pedro's team has been on a decline. But you have to understand nuance in that, your opponents maybe don't show up. I thought that I was going to blow Pedro out that week, but what I didn't count on is that my team would just be non-existent and I would score 53 points. So Pedro's team is the least dangerous team out of the 4 playoff teams. Andy, of course, being the 4th playoff team. And of course, nuance again. I said Andy fucked up at the beginning of the season. Yes, he did. Because when you are the champion and you pick 2 consecutive picks, you have the opportunity to become an elite team. Why is Andy not amongst or in between Eric and Paul? He's not there because he doesn't have a number 1 anything. Outside of Russell Wilson, that's his only chance, and that's a quarterback. Quarterbacks who win the number 1 slot often outscore the second quarterback by like 20 or 30 points. It's nothing. Quarterbacks are all big dicks and they're all swinging around. Russell Wilson is capable of that. But, you take, say for example this, right? So my point total this season has been, let's see, let's go back to the standings. My point total so far has been rest in peace to Alex Trebek. You guys should look up this random clip of Alex Trebek. It's a very heartwarming. I can't believe I just said that on the recaps. It's probably because I'm a dad now. It's a very heartwarming clip where some guy tells Alex that he loves him. That's his answer at the end. He didn't know the answer to the last question, so he just wrote it on the pad. We love you, Alex. And Alex gets choked up. It's really nice. Fuck cancer. All right. So my total is 910. Right? No, that's how many I've given up. My point total is 848 to Andy's 979. I would argue that if I had CMC, I would easily have 50 to 60 points more this season. I wouldn't be that behind Andy. I'd be like 60 points behind Andy. That speaks to the strength of CMC and the difference that he can make in a squad. And the fact that Andy has, he's had a decent team, but Andy had you had the opportunity with the 10th and 11th pick to get another elite team. You didn't pick an elite team. You picked a mid-level team, So when I said you fucked up, yeah, you made the playoffs, but Eric or Paul, they'll fucking eat you. They will fucking devour you, just like you devoured Eric in the second round last season. So those are the 4 teams, right? Those teams are in the playoffs. So let's discuss the bubble teams. You of course have Jay at 5-5, Orlando at 4-6, Joe at 4-6, Team Bundy at 3-7, Ed at 3-7, and Hensel at 3-7. So what I basically want to discuss is difficulty of schedule. So I'm going to read off the schedules, the next 3 games for all of us, and then who I think has the hardest to easiest schedule, taking managerial skills into account. Managerial skills, which is just paying attention to your team and, all those other things like that. So Hensel in the next 3 weeks faces Jay, Ed, and Orlando. Ed faces me, Hensel, and Dro. Joe faces Orlando, Eric, and Andy. I think you know where I'm going with that. Team Bundy faces Ed, Orlando, and Eric. Orlando faces Joe, Bundy, and Hensel. And Jay faces Hensel, Dro, and Paul. In my opinion, degree of difficulty goes to Joe, because Joe is facing two playoff teams in Eric and Andy, and in my opinion, as I've said before, Orlando, who is he's the cream of the crop within this group. So Joe, being that he just lost Drew Brees, I know he just got Ben Roethlisberger. Joe is Joe. He's gone. He's done. He should think about what he's going to do for next season and how he should maybe structure his draft. Joe's due to have a strong season, because when you've picked from the same position, 1 to 2, you should really develop a strategy already at this point. And that's not even a knock at Joe. It's like literally because you've done the same thing every season. So Joe is number 1. Number 2, in my opinion, would be Jay with the toughest schedule, because he faces Dro and Paul. Paul, the very last game of the season. That's a tough one. And Dro, of course, is a playoff team. Team Bundy is number 3 because I face Orlando and Eric. Eric, the last game of the season. Ed is number 4, only because he faces Dro, and that's about it. He just has one playoff team. Hensel faces Jay, Ed, and Orlando, kind of a softer schedule than the rest of us, and Orlando faces no playoff teams. At least they're not playoff teams yet, in Joe, Bundy, and Hensel. Now, of course, what factors into this too is the fact that Jay is 5-5. So basically, I haven't done the math on this situation, but if J Ray wins, he's going to be in. Orlando will be good. Same with Joe, even though Joe will get devoured this week because he faces one of the stronger teams. No, he doesn't. Joe faces Orlando. That I was confusing him with somebody else. They win, they're in, and they have the advantage in that sense. But degree of difficulty goes to Joe. He will be devoured. He will not make the playoffs. I think I could almost guarantee that, even though he has an extra victory than all of us. I also had a frustrating loss to Joe this year too. It was a win that I felt I should have had. There's about 2 to 3 wins that are just like, fuck you, 2020. Just go fuck yourself. I know Orlando can relate, because I know he's had like a couple frustrating losses as well. He was due to get, some sort of fortune with Adam Thielen. So let's move on to the Week 11 games. Of course, as I said, as I addressed in the beginning, the trade deadline is up November 20th, 3 a.m., which I believe is Friday, 3 a.m., 12 a.m. For Dro, Toronto. I'm on Eastern Standard Time. So, that basically means that you guys got to get a deal done as soon as possible so it can register and you can, possibly have somebody ready for the Thursday games. I'm not sure if I'm never quite sure how long it takes to activate or why it takes to activate. Orlando's more educated on that, but make those trades quick, or at least if you're going to make a trade on Friday, just, think of the rest of the season. Some of you, I'm fucking astonished at the fact that you guys haven't made any fucking moves. Ed, fucking Joe, like, you guys, I am fucking astonished at the fact that you guys have not done anything. So let's move on to those Week 11 games. You have Team Bundy going up against the Generation X. This is a playoff game. Whoever wins continues to stay in playoff contention, and the other one is eliminated. That's it. Only if I beat Ed, or if Ed beats me, it's like, at this point, our seasons are so bad that it's like, yeah, we eliminated each other, but it's like, yeah, we were dead several weeks ago. So it's just like, just being taken out of your misery. I think I've got the advantage in this game. I think my team is much stronger than Ed's. It would have been way more one-sided if I had CMC. Ed's team just relies on heavy scoring. If Ed doesn't get huge performances, then Ed's team doesn't really show up. I mean, obviously with the amazing fucking, that's gonna go down as the play of the year. With the DeAndre Hopkins catch, he's got CD Lamb, which unfortunately for me, Schultz, which is the tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. Everybody for the Dallas Cowboys has been rendered useless. Most of all, Zeke. Excuse me. Zeke has been rendered useless. He's got CD Lamb. There's no threats on Ed's team. There's really no threats whatsoever. Ed's just kind of drifting away. He's given up on Adrian Peterson. Of course, I have Swift. Ed hasn't made me an offer. That would be a very smart acquisition for Ed, but I don't know. Ed just doesn't throw any trade. Ed's probably participating in other leagues that he cares about, and he's probably just written this off as kind of which I would say sometimes when you have an owner who is educated and they give a shit about their team and they just kind of just sit back and let everything drift away, you almost look at them with a side eye like, nigga, you gave it like 80% this season, and Ed gave it 80% this season. He's not trying to make any moves. I think he's just like, he's just like me that time. The Alfredians will remember this. He's just like me, in that party. I don't remember where it was, in the party where I was like drowned by coats and I was drunk as fuck and everybody just kept throwing their coats on me, and it was actually kind of comforting. I thank everyone who did that. That's kind of what it is. He's just like, he just gets submerged under more and more fucking coats, and he's gonna die out. So go fuck yourself, Ed. I should be the victor in that matchup. You also have Rollo Tomassi going up against La Bamba, and Rollo Tomassi should walk away with this victory. La Bamba, as I've said, he hasn't even scored over 80 points since he's let go of Alvin Kamara, and Paul, you'd be fucking hard-pressed to see him score anything less than 100. So he should walk away with the division victory, and significant fantasy football for him is weeks away. Eric going up against Night Fox, and of course this is a bit of a tougher matchup. Eric has the strongest team, but Andy's team could pop up with a few surprises, but it really doesn't make a difference because they're both going to get into the playoffs. I know Andy and Eric want to, they want to add significance to this, and as I said before, remember, Andy eliminated Eric in the second round to advance into the playoffs. So if there's any added incentive for Eric to beat Andy, there it is. Andy fucking eliminated you. He eliminated you. That's what's in the back of Eric's brain. That's stupid. He eliminated you. He eliminated you. He eliminated you. So, yeah, hold that. Team Fuck You going up against Charles Lee J. Ray in, these are very significant matchups because these are, this is, you don't really know who's going to walk away with this one. This one is kind of like, it's up in the air. I would say that Hensel's team should be due for a surprise performance. Hensel's had a few strong performances, which is why he's racked up 3 wins, and I just caught up to fucking 3 wins. He's had a couple of performances where he scored a good deal of points, but Hensel's lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight games. I mean, in fantasy, it's just it's just the law of averages. Eventually, a team could go off for 120 points, and maybe this will be the week. But that one's up in the air. Let's see what happens there. And then, of course, you have the Brother Bowl with Joelicus Maximus going up against the White Ranger. I give the White Ranger the complete advantage in that one because, of course, Patrick Mahomes is back, and Orlando has the ultimate Hydra. Joe, of course, has Travis Kelce, and that could make things interesting. He could offset some points there, but in the end, I don't think he's going to be able to do much, and Orlando will probably punch his ticket in. Orlando and Jay have their destiny in their hands. That's what changed with the victory against Andy. And that's just another reason why Andy is just like Andy's just like this cancer that no matter what. Here's who Andy is. Andy likes to analogize himself through like things and stuff. He's not fucking Thanos. He's not anything. You can't be Thanos. Thanos doesn't get the Infinity Gauntlet years later and everybody then notices that he's a contender. That's not who he is. You know who Andy is? Andy is that gremlin. Remember the Gremlins movie? I don't know if it was like part 2 or something where they took over like this corporate building. They took over the corporate building, and it was really a fun movie because then you had like different incarnations of gremlins. You had like a gremlin who was like effeminate. You had like alpha gremlins, and then you had this gremlin that was electricity. He was electric. You remember that one? And he went into the circuit systems and he was able to like hack things, and then you saw like a digital version of him. That's Andy. It's like this virus that lives within the league, and he's like and he's just like all over the place. That's why he lost to Orlando, because that's just the chaos that Andy has to create. He'll lose when it's beneficial to lose. That changed things. That touchdown by Adam Thielen changed things, man. If Orlando makes the playoffs and Orlando has some fantasy success, that moment right there, and if Orlando just so happens to win his 3rd championship with that would fucking break my fucking heart. That moment right there, he got that over Andy. He got that moment over Andy. Like he should take a picture of, he should print that out and posterize that shit, laminate it, and fucking send it to Andy when Andy gives him the belt, because that was a big moment. That was definitely a big moment. And now he's got Joel. He's got the worst team in the league. So there you go. Yeah. So that's it. A lot covered in this recap. This was a very dense recap. We of course are back. We will be with you until the end of the fantasy season because all equipment has been recovered and we are here with you. So, as always, may your quarterbacks get hurt before they leave the locker room. May your running backs pull their hamstrings, and may your wide receivers get arrested for marijuana possession. Go fuck yourselves.